Stop trying to protect yourself from the world. That's what's making you weak. The moment you realize the universe isn't attacking you, it's testing you, everything changes. And most people will never understand this. Look, we've been fed this idea that life should be comfortable, that things should be easy, that if we just find the right formula, the right routine, the right mindset, everything will fall into place. But that's not how reality works. The world doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't care about your plans. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can actually start living. Because here's the thing, relentlessness isn't about being aggressive or forceful. It's about understanding something most people refuse to see about how existence actually operates. We live in this strange time where everyone's looking for hacks and shortcuts, 5 steps to success, 3 secrets to happiness, 10 ways to never feel anxious again. And all of this is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be alive. We treat discomfort like it's a disease. We treat obstacles like they're errors in the system. We treat resistance like it's the universe telling us we're on the wrong path. But what if that's completely backwards? What if the resistance is the path? What if the obstacles aren't blocking your way, but actually creating it? See, the world has this interesting way of revealing who you really are, not through the easy moments, not through the victories, but through the pressure, through the chaos, through the moments when everything seems to be falling apart. And most people, when they hit that pressure, they do one of 2 things. They either collapse inward, becoming bitter and defeated, blaming the world for being unfair, or they fight against reality itself, exhausting themselves trying to force life to be something it isn't. Both responses come from the same confused place. Both responses assume that the world is supposed to be different than it is, that you're entitled to an easier experience, that suffering is optional if you just think the right thoughts or take the right actions. But relentlessness starts with a completely different understanding. It starts with seeing that life isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. The world isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. And what you're seeing in that mirror right now, all that chaos and pressure and uncertainty, we've been taught to believe that having control over our circumstances is the key to happiness. Get the right job, find the right relationship, build the right life, and then supposedly you'll be safe. You'll be secure. You'll finally be able to relax. But think about this actually. It means your peace of mind is completely dependent on external factors staying exactly as you want them. It means you're constantly at war with reality, trying to arrange the world like furniture in a room. And the moment something doesn't fit your arrangement, you suffer, you panic, you feel like everything's falling apart. This is exhausting. This is why so many people feel anxious all the time. They're trying to control things that can't be controlled. They're trying to make permanent what is inherently impermanent. They're trying to freeze life in place when life is by its very nature movement and change. Now, here's where it gets interesting. When you start to see this pattern in yourself, when you start to notice how much energy you're spending trying to control everything, you might think the answer is to just give up, to become passive, to stop caring, but that's not relentlessness, that's just another form of resistance. That's just the flip side of the same coin. Real relentlessness comes from understanding that you're not separate from the world that's challenging you. You're not an isolated thing inside your head, looking out at a hostile universe. You're part of the whole process. The world isn't testing you like a teacher tests a student. It's more like the ocean is testing the wave is the ocean. The testing eye is the thing being tested. Think about water for a second. Water doesn't fight against obstacles. When water encounters a rock, it doesn't stop and say, "This isn't fair, there shouldn't be a rock here." It doesn't collapse and give up. It just moves. It finds another way. It goes around, it goes under, it goes over, and eventually, given enough time, the water shapes the rock. Not through force, not through aggression, but through persistent, relentless movement. This is what most people miss. They think relentlessness means pushing harder, gritting your teeth, forcing your way through, but that's just control in a different costume. That's still fighting against reality. That's still assuming that the way things are is wrong and needs to be fixed. Tundret's relentlessness is more like water. It's about moving with reality, not against it. It's about being so present, so fluid, so responsive to what's actually happening that obstacles become opportunities. Not because you're trying to be positive or because you're forcing yourself to see the good in everything, but because you've stopped dividing the world into good and bad, easy and hard, for you and against you. When you really get this, something shifts. The world doesn't seem less challenging. The problems don't disappear. But your relationship to all of it changes. You stop wasting energy resisting what is. You stop exhausting yourself trying to make reality conform to your preferences. And that energy, all that energy you were using to fight against life, suddenly becomes available for actually living. People talk about burnout like it's caused by working too hard or caring too much, but that's not what burns you out. What burns you out is the constant internal conflict between what is and what you think should be. What burns you out is trying to control everything while simultaneously feeling like you have no control. What burns you out is being at war with existence itself. Relentlessness ends that war, not by winning it, but by realizing there was never actually a war to begin with. There was only your resistance to what is. And the moment you stop resisting, the moment you start moving with reality instead of against it, you discover this. You discover that you have way more capacity than you thought, that you're way more resilient than you believed, that the world wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to show you what you actually are underneath all your ideas about what you should be. This trap of seeking permanence in an impermanent world. Now let's go deeper into something that causes massive suffering for people, and it's this obsession with making things last forever. We want permanent jobs, permanent relationships, permanent states of happiness. We build our entire lives around trying to create stability in a universe that is fundamentally unstable. And look, this makes sense on a surface level. Of course you want security. Of course you want to know that tomorrow will be roughly similar to today. But here's the problem. The more you try to make things permanent, the more you suffer when they inevitably change. And they will change. Everything changes. That's not pessimism. That's just how reality works. Think about your own experience. How many times have you held on to something long after it stopped serving you? How many times have you stayed in a situation, a job, a relationship, a way of thinking, simply because it was familiar? Simply because. And how much did you suffer trying to keep that thing alive, trying to preserve it, trying to prevent the natural flow of life from moving through it? This is what happens when you don't understand impermanence. You turn your life into a museum. You're constantly trying to preserve the past, to keep things exactly as they were in some moment when you felt good. But life isn't a museum. Life is a river. And you can't step in the same river twice because the river is always changing. And so the relentless person understands this. They understand that everything that begins will end. Every high will be followed by a low. Every success will eventually give way to a new challenge. But instead of finding this depressing, they find it liberating, because if nothing lasts forever, then failure isn't final. Pain isn't permanent. Whatever you're going through right now, no matter how intense, will change. It has to. That's the nature of reality. But more than that, when you stop trying to make things permanent, you stop being afraid of loss. And when you stop being afraid of loss, you can actually participate fully in life. You can love without holding back, because you know that love will change form, but it won't disappear. You can pursue your goals without being paralyzed by the fear of failure, because you know that failure is just another change, a movement in the river. Most people spend their lives trying to build walls against change. They accumulate possessions thinking that ownership will give them security. They try to control other people thinking that if everyone behaves the way they want, they'll finally feel safe. Right? They avoid new experiences because new experiences might disrupt the carefully constructed stability they've created. But here's what actually happens. The walls you build to keep change out become the prison you live in. The security you create becomes the thing that makes you rigid and afraid. And the more rigid you become, the more painful it is when change inevitably comes. Because change will come. The universe doesn't care about your walls. Relentlessness is the opposite of this. It's being so flexible, so adaptable, so willing to change that nothing can break you. Not because you're hard, but because you're fluid. Think about bamboo. Bamboo can bend in the strongest winds without breaking. Meanwhile, rigid trees snap. The bamboo survives not because it's stronger, but because it moves with the force instead of resisting it. This is what you need to understand about surviving in a world that will test you constantly. You don't survive by being hard. You don't survive by building walls. You don't survive by trying to control everything. You survive by being so present, so fluid, so willing to adapt that you can respond to whatever comes, not from a place of fear, not from a place of resistance, but from a place of deep acceptance of what is. And when you live this way, something amazing happens. You stop feeling like a victim. You stop feeling like the world is out to get you. Because you realize that every challenge, every obstacle, every moment of discomfort is just life doing what life does. It's moving, it's changing, it's flowing, and you're part of that flow, not separate from it. The suffering comes from thinking you're separate, from thinking you're an isolated individual who has to protect yourself from a hostile world. But you're not separate. You never were. You're a wave in the ocean pretending to be separate from the water. And the moment you realize you are the water, everything changes. The wave doesn't fear crashing on the shore because the wave knows it. Miner's just the ocean expressing itself in that particular form for that particular moment. WHY, comfort is making you fragile. Let's talk about something that's going to make some people uncomfortable. Comfort is not your friend. I know that sounds harsh. I know we've been taught that the goal of life is to be as comfortable as possible. But comfort is actually making you weak. It's making you fragile. It's making you less capable of handling what life is actually going to throw at you. Think about muscles for a second. How do muscles grow? Through resistance, through being challenged, through being pushed beyond what they're currently capable of. If you never challenge your muscles, they atrophy, they get weaker. The same thing happens with your mind, your emotions, your capacity to handle difficulty. When you spend all your time seeking comfort, avoiding discomfort, running from anything that feels hard, you're not protecting yourself, you're weakening yourself. You're guaranteeing that when something truly difficult comes along, and you won't have the capacity to handle it because you never developed that capacity. You never trained for it. This is why so many people fall apart when faced with relatively minor obstacles. Not because the obstacles are actually that big, but because they've spent so long avoiding discomfort that they have no tolerance for it. They've lived in such a narrow comfort zone for so long that anything outside of it feels catastrophic. But here's the thing about life. Life doesn't care about your comfort zone. Life is going to bring challenges, whether you want them or not. People you love will die. Relationships will end. Jobs will be lost. Plans will fall apart. And if you've spent your whole life avoiding these realities, trying to stay comfortable, trying to stay safe, you're going to be completely unprepared when they happen. Relentlessness understands this. Relentlessness knows that the way to develop real strength is through voluntary discomfort. Not because suffering is good, Not because you should seek out pain for its own sake, but because when you regularly expose yourself to discomfort on your own terms, you build the capacity to handle discomfort when it comes on life's terms. This is why people who challenge themselves regularly, who do hard things, who push beyond their comfort zones, these people tend to be happier and more resilient. Not because their lives are easier, but because they've developed the capacity to handle difficulty. They've trained for it. They're not shocked when something hard happens because they've voluntarily chosen hard things over and over again. Think about someone who never exercises and then tries to run a marathon. They're going to suffer massively. Their body isn't prepared. They haven't built up the capacity. Now think about someone who trains regularly, who gradually increases the difficulty, who builds their endurance over time. Running the marathon is still hard, but they've prepared for that hardness. They've developed the capacity to handle it. The same principle applies to your mental and emotional life. If you never challenge your thinking, if you never expose yourself to ideas that make you uncomfortable, if you never sit with difficult emotions, you're going to be fragile. You're going to break easily, and you're going to spend your life afraid because deep down you know you can't handle difficulty. Yeah. But when you voluntarily choose discomfort, when you regularly do things that challenge you, when you sit with difficult emotions instead of running from them, you develop real confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from positive affirmations or motivational videos, but the deep, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever comes. Because you've proven it to yourself over and over again. This is what relentlessness actually looks like in practice. It's not about being tough or hard or pushing through everything. It's about having such a developed capacity to handle difficulty that challenges don't throw you off course. They're just part of the landscape. They're expected, and because they're expected, they don't have the power to destroy you. Most people are surprised by difficulty. They think if they just plan well enough, work hard enough, think positive enough, they can avoid it. So when difficulty comes, they feel betrayed, they feel like something's gone wrong, they feel like the universe is punishing them. But the relentless person expects difficulty. They know it's coming, they've trained for it. So when it arrives, they're not surprised, they're ready. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop being surprised by difficulty, when you stop treating it like it's abnormal or wrong, it loses its power over you. It's just another thing to move through, just another challenge to meet, just another opportunity to demonstrate to yourself that you're capable of handling what life brings. Teach power percency in CHOS. Now we need to talk about something that ties all of this together. Say, being here. Now, fully engaged with what is actually happening instead of lost in your thoughts about what should be happening or what might happen next. This is the foundation of relentlessness. This is what makes everything else possible. Most people are not present. They're living in their heads. They're thinking about the past, replaying conversations, rehashing decisions, wondering what they should have done differently. Or they're thinking about the future, worrying about what might happen, planning for scenarios that may never occur, trying to control outcomes they can't control. And while they're doing this, while they're lost in thought, actual life is happening. Real moments are passing by. Opportunities are appearing and disappearing. The present moment, the only moment where you actually have any power, is being completely ignored. Power. This is why people feel so powerless. Not because they actually lack power, but because they're directing their attention to places where they have no power. You can't change the past. It's done. You can't control the future. It hasn't happened yet. The only place where you actually have any influence is right here, right now. But most people are never here. They're always somewhere else in their minds. See, relentlessness requires being present because you can't respond appropriately to what's happening if you're not actually here for it. If you're lost in thoughts about how things should be different, you can't see what actually is. If you're worried about what might happen next, you can't act effectively in this moment. You're always one step removed from reality. And that gap between you and reality is where all your suffering lives. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe you were creating something, or playing a sport, or having a deep conversation. In those moments, where was your anxiety? Where was your depression? Where was your fear? It wasn't there. Not because the problems in your life disappeared, but because you were so present, so engaged with what was actually happening, that there was no room for the mental stories that create suffering. This is what's available to you all the time, not just in special moments, but in every moment. The only thing preventing you from accessing it is your habit of being lost in thought, your habit of living in your head instead of living in reality. Now, being present doesn't mean you never think about the past or plan for the future. That's not realistic, and it's not even desirable. But there's a difference between using thought as a tool and being trapped in thought as your entire experience of reality. There's a difference between consciously reflecting on the past to learn from it and being haunted by the past because you can't let it go. There's a difference between preparing for the future and being paralyzed by anxiety about things that haven't happened. The relentless person knows how to use thought without being used by it. They can think about the past when it's useful. They can plan for the future when it's appropriate. But they're rooted in the present. They know that this moment, right here, right now, is where life is actually happening. And they're here for it. This is what gives them their power. When a challenge arises, they don't waste energy wishing it wasn't there. They don't spiral into thoughts about how unfair it is, or what it means about them, or what terrible thing might happen next. They simply see what's in front of them and respond, not from a place of reaction, not from a place of emotion, but from a place of clear seeing. And this clear seeing is only possible in the present moment. When you're here, really here, you can see things as they actually are instead of as your thoughts tell you they are. You can respond to reality instead of responding to your interpretation of reality, and that makes all the difference. Most people are fighting ghosts. They're fighting their thoughts about reality rather than reality itself. They're responding to their fears about what might happen rather than what is actually happening. And this is exhausting. This is why people burn out. Not because reality is too much for them, but because fighting their own thoughts about reality is too much for them. When you become present, you stop fighting ghosts. You stop arguing with reality. You stop resisting what is. And all that energy, all that mental and emotional energy that was being wasted on internal conflict suddenly becomes available for actually responding, for actually moving forward. Becoming relentless, the shift from doing to being. So here's where we bring it all together. Relentlessness isn't something you do, it's something you become. It's not a technique or a strategy or a set of actions. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to existence itself. Most people approach life like it's a problem to be solved. They think if they can just figure out the right formula, the right approach, the right mindset, everything will work out. But this keeps them trapped in doing, always trying, always striving to make themselves into something they think they should be. Relentlessness is different. It's a shift from doing to being. It's realizing that you don't need to become relentless. You need to stop being the things that prevent relentlessness from being your natural state. You need to stop resisting reality. Stop trying to control everything. Stop seeking permanent comfort. Stop living in your head instead of in the present moment. When you stop doing these things, what's left is your natural state. And your natural state is already relentless. Not in the sense of being aggressive or forceful, but in the sense of being like water, fluid, adaptable, persistent, moving with what is rather than against it. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall down constantly. But do they give up? Do they decide walking isn't for them? Do they feel like failures? No. They just keep trying, not because they're being relentless in the way we usually think about it, but because they haven't yet learned to resist failure. They haven't yet learned to make falling down mean something about their worth. They're just present with what's happening and they keep moving. That's your natural state. before you learn to resist, before you learn to make everything mean something, before you learn that discomfort is bad and comfort is good, before you learn to divide the world into things that are for you and things that are against you. You were already relentless. You were already fluid. You were already capable of moving through whatever came your way. The work isn't to become something new. The work is to unlearn the habits that make you rigid, the beliefs that make you fragile, the mental patterns that keep you trapped in resistance. When you drop those things, what remains is what you actually are. And what you actually are is way more capable than you've been led to believe. This is the secret that the world has been trying to show you all along through every challenge, obstacle, every moment of pressure. You're not as separate as you think you are. You're not as fragile as you've been taught. You're not an isolated individual trying to survive in a hostile universe. You're the universe itself expressing itself through this particular form, for this particular moment. No. And when you really get this, when you really see this, the whole game changes. Challenges aren't threats anymore. They're just life doing what life does. Obstacles aren't problems anymore. They're just the landscape. Discomfort isn't something to avoid anymore. It's just another experience to move through. You become like the ocean. The ocean doesn't resist the waves. The ocean is the waves. The ocean doesn't fight against the storms. The storms are the ocean expressing itself. And nothing that happens to the ocean can destroy the ocean, because everything that happens is the ocean. This is what it means to be truly relentless. Not fighting harder, not trying more, not forcing yourself to be tough or strong or unbreakable, but realizing that you're already unbreakable because there's nothing to break. What you actually are, underneath all your ideas about what you are, has never been damaged by anything that's happened. It's been watching the whole show, completely unchanged, completely whole, completely present. The suffering, the fear, the sense that you might not make it through, all of that is happening in the mind. All of that is thought. All of that is your resistance to what is. But what you actually are, your true nature, is prior to thought. It's already here. It's already whole. It's already relentless in the deepest sense of the word. So the invitation isn't to become relentless. The invitation is to stop pretending you're something other than what you are. Stop pretending you're a separate, fragile individual who needs to protect themselves from the world. Stop pretending that comfort will save you or that control will make you safe. Stop pretending that you can avoid difficulty or make things permanent or escape the fundamental nature of reality. Just be what you are. Just be here. Just move with what is. That's relentlessness. That's what makes you unbreakable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because you've stopped identifying with the part of you that can be hurt. You've stopped mistaking the wave for the ocean. And once you see you're the ocean, what can possibly destroy you? You're already everything. You're already whole. You always have been. Look, the world isn't going to get easier. Challenges aren't going to stop coming. Life isn't going to suddenly start making sense in the way your mind wants it to. But that's not a problem. That's just reality. And the moment you stop fighting reality, the moment you stop resisting what is, you discover something incredible. You discover that you were never as fragile as you thought, that you're capable of handling way more than you believed, that the world wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to wake you up to what you actually are. Relentlessness isn't about being tough. It's about being real. It's about seeing clearly. It's about moving with life instead of against it. And when you do that, when you really do that, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing can stop you, but because you've stopped stopping yourself. If this changed how you see things, check out the next video where we go even deeper.